Welcome to all our viewers watching and tuning in to us live as I present you our daily English news. The headlines for today: a diaspora group says Ethiopia's prime minister is open to talks with the Tigray forces. ICRC aid flights delivers life-saving medical supplies into Tigray, and new evidence supports accusations that Ethiopia is using Turkish drones to bomb its own civilians. Our main news for today: Ethiopia's prime minister has said there will be negotiations between his government and the rival Tigray forces, as the chairman of the diaspora group said to the Associated Press. Timnit Bayru has more on the story.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has never said so publicly as international mediation efforts continue amid one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. Mesfin Tegenyo, chairman of the American-Ethiopian Public Affairs Committee, who claimed to have had a 5-hour private meeting with Abiy Ahmed on Saturday, said the prime minister told him there will be negotiations. Mesfin added the new U.S. Special Envoy who visited Ethiopia last week would have ideas about the process. At first, the discussion was a little hostile to Abiy, Mesfin said, but the prime minister told the diaspora group that the Tigray forces were contained and that not pushing further into the Tigray region gives the government time to force ethnic Tigrayans to reconsider their support for the fighters. An official with U.S. Special Envoy David Satterfield did not immediately respond to questions. The U.S. has given no details about Satterfield's first visit to Ethiopia as Special Envoy last week. On Tuesday, the State Department said he would be traveling to Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Turkey, and Israel through February 4th to discuss Sudan and the Horn of Africa at large. Belene Siyum, Foreign Press Secretary for the Office of Prime Minister, described the U.S.'s sanctions to pressure the government to end the war against the Tigray forces as obsolete. The war's combatants also include soldiers from neighboring Eritrea who are allied with Ethiopian forces and blamed by witnesses for some of the worst atrocities in the war, as well as fighters from Amhara who now occupy western Tigray. Recent provocative attacks by Abiy Ahmed's allies in the Afar region and the Eritrean government indicate, coupled with the drone strikes and continued siege of Tigray, are indicative of the regime's tendency to feign peace while preparing for war. With Eritrea's involvement, any possibility of ending the war through negotiated settlement goes directly through Asmara, Eritrea's capital. The leader of the Tigray forces, Debretsion Gebramikael, wrote last week on the Africa Report. Jamal Humed, the editor-in-chief of Adolis, an Eritrean website based in Australia, told the New Arab that the Eritrean president will work to obstruct this reconciliation at any cost. According to Humed, one of the main goals of the Eritrean government in the Ethiopian war was the elimination of the Tigray forces and the removal of their political scene completely, which could not be achieved if reconciliation takes place. Asmara also has concerns that sponsors of the reconciliation could not pressure on Addis Ababa to dismantle its allegiance with Eritrea, which will cast a heavy shadow on the country's geopolitical situation. Since its forces were accused of committing atrocities against civilians during their participation in the Ethiopian conflict, which Asmara continues to deny, the Eritrean regime is worried that its forces would be scapegoated in the framework of any possible settlement.
ICRC made its first delivery of medical supplies since last September into Ma'ala, the Tigray capital, today. The urgently needed supplies, including essential drugs, have arrived into Ma'ala and they'll be distributed to the region's health facilities. Apollo Barasa, who is the health coordinator at the ICRC delegation in Ethiopia, says it is a huge relief that this first shipment is reaching its hospitals. He also said this assistance is a lifeline for thousands of people, and he goes to say that he can't emphasize enough how crucial it is that these deliveries continue. The ICRC intends to organize other flights carrying medical assistance into the coming days as well as weeks. In addition, it is planning to send humanitarian convoy by road as soon as security conditions allow so. At the same time, the ICRC will continue to provide medical assistance to health facilities in the Amhara and Afar regions, where provisions of health care has also been severely impacted by this ongoing conflict. Barasa said the medical personnel in the north of Ethiopia working in extreme difficult conditions, responding to the urgent needs of the people. The ICRC reminds all parties involved in this conflict that they must facilitate the delivery of humanitarian assistance to all those who are in need. New evidence has emerged to support the accusations that the Ethiopian government used Turkish drones to attack its own civilians, according to reports released on Tuesday. Timnit Bayru has more on this story.
Photographs obtained by aid workers showed missile fragments from a strike on the town of Dadabit in northwestern Tigray on January 7th, which resulted in the deaths of 58 civilians sheltering in a school, according to Politico. The images were studied by Dutch NGO PAX, who identified the weapon used as a Turkish Bayraktar TB2 drone, adding to long suspected allegations that Turkey has been supplying arms to Addis Ababa for its offensive against the Tigray forces. Earlier this month, satellite images confirmed the presence of TB2 armed drones at the Harar Meda military airport at Bishoftu, just south of Ethiopia's capital, according to PAX. The newly obtained photos provide further evidence to support claims that Turkey is capitalizing on Ethiopia's conflict, in direct contradiction to the Arms Trade Treaty, which regulates the trade in conventional weapons such as drones and was signed by Ankara in 2013, representatives from the NGO said. Bayraktar, the alleged manufacturer of the drones, is where Erdogan's son-in-law, Selçuk Bayraktar, works as chief technology officer. Turkey has been rapidly building up its drone export industry, developing the cheap but effective weapon of choice for many states, according to the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. U.S. authorities have already expressed concerns over Turkey's sale of armed drones to Ethiopia, which two sources familiar with the matter stating there was mounting evidence of the trade, according to Reuters. The New Arab contacted the Turkish embassy in London about the sale of drones to Ethiopia, which did not respond to a request for comment. Politico asked the Turkish government spokespeople in Ankara about the sale of munitions to the East African country, but did not receive a response. Politico asked Turkish government spokesperson in Ankara about the sale of munitions to the East African country, but did not receive a response. The use of armed drones in Ethiopia's conflict, as with the use of any air power, raises questions about collateral damage and civilian deaths, which are all but inevitable from airstrikes during a prolonged conflict. There is clearly a very low threshold for what constitutes a military target, says Will Davidson, senior Ethiopia analyst for International Crisis Group. He notes airstrikes carried out on a hydropower station and a textile factory and others which have caused civilian deaths in the likes of marketplaces and displaced camps in Tigray. When retreating from Mu'alla, the Ethiopian government declared the whole people of Tigray turned against them. For them, any differentiation between a soldier and a civilian doesn't work, and thus the reason for indiscriminate attacks and choice of targets is for maximum kill, says an Ethiopian academic who has worked on African issues of peace and security, including as a senior advisor for the UN, who requested anonymity. This has been an exceedingly dirty and bitter fight. The list of potential war crimes in the Ethiopian conflict is long. This war has been characterized by misinformation, confusion, ethnic hatred, extrajudicial killings, systematic rape, and massacres of civilians. The PAX report says though Turkey signed the Arms Trade Treaty, an international treaty that regulates the trade in conventional weapons, including armed drones, it still has not ratified it yet. With new arms exports contracts for Turkish drones concluded all over Africa, it is expected that the growing deployment of arms drones will soon see an increase as well, says the PAX report.
Ethiopia's cabinet on Wednesday approved the lifting of a 6-month state of emergency ahead of its expiration. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's office said in a statement the decision was made in light of the changing security conditions within the country. Ethiopia declared the state of emergency back in November after forces from the northern region of Tigray said that they had gained territory and were considering marching onto the capital of Addis Ababa. The statement from the Prime Minister's office said, "Now we have reached a stage where their threats can be neutralized through regular law enforcement mechanisms." The cabinet's decision was sent into Parliament for its approval. Over the weekend, the Ethiopian military said it was planning to enter Tigray regional capital of Ma'ala and so-called eliminate the Tigray forces. The statement came in diplomatic efforts to end the conflict that broke out in November of 2020 and has displaced millions and triggered a widespread hunger and humanitarian crisis. That concludes our news for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Goodbye.